This week I want to share with you a tool that some see as negative in various connotations. One step forward and end up taking two steps back, and I'm going to show you how you can use it in various different ways. Welcome to the MindFuckery Podcast, which is FeedSpot's fifth must-listen to podcast on emotional abuse. I'm your host Elizabeth, and in here we explore areas others are feared to tread. Through my own personal journey, I know how much this hurts and how confusing life becomes. So many questions, no closure, and no real answers. I've been a woundologist for over 20 years. I'm the unintentional author of Finding Lily, the A to Z of emotional abuse and divorce matters. I help you clear past life wounds, ancestral trauma, and this life wounding. And as the founder of the Inner Healing Sanctuary, I've created Wound Talking, The Original Wound, and Quantum Glow. I'm on a mission to help educate as many people as I can on the effects of trauma on our lives and our children's lives, and healing the wounds of our mothers and our fathers. It stops here, it stops now, it stops with us. So welcome along for the journey of a lifetime. This week, I'm going to share with you a tool that, as I said, some people think of as a negative thing, as in the way that people might say, I take one step forward and end up taking two steps back, as if they're not getting anywhere. So 3 things where it's a powerful tool to take a step back. Sometimes we can get caught up with emotions, and it can be actually driven from a wound where we are overcome, or an emotion overtakes us and we're reacting from a place of maybe fear or survival. So taking a step back in that moment actually allows us to calm down the nervous system, and using things like grounding and breathing, and actually having that ability to talk to ourselves in that moment and say, what is really going on? Why am I responding? Is there a fear? What else is behind this? That is a really, really powerful tool. It's like buying yourself time to think, to get clarity. And maybe and I used to talk about this a lot on YouTube actually, when I started my channel, about buying time, having stock answers in our pockets to turn around and say and practice things. I need a bit of time to think about that. Or let me check my diary and can I come back to you? And it's giving yourself breathing space to think whether you want to do something, whether you want to be involved in a project, whether you want to go somewhere, rather than I feel I should be doing this and saying yes and then later regretting it, or being forced into a position to agree to something that you are doing that through fear. It might be that you're reacting to somebody else's reaction, and it's really powerful to step back and go, oh, hang on a minute. What is really going on here? Why am I feeling like this? Why are these emotions coming up? What's going on in my body? And our bodies are so powerful, and they know so much. And we can learn so much from them by literally scanning. I use the example of standing at the airport, and majority of the time, it hasn't happened so much recently, majority of the time, I always got pulled over at security, and I had to stand in one of those tubes. And this is how I describe being able to scan into your body. And I used to stand in this tube, and there's a hand position on the clear wall and a foot position, and the scanner goes around you. So you can use that as a way of doing the same thing with your body, scanning into your body and feeling where it's not quite right. Your gut is your first brain. That's the one we should be listening to. That was the one that flagged up, something was wrong, but we overrode that. That's another story, another day. So taking a step back, maybe having a few things that you can say to bide you, give you that time so you're not forced into a position to agree. These are really helpful tools for boundary setting. When you're in negotiations and you're being pressured into something, take a step back, step out of the room, step away from the laptop, step away from your computer, put the letter down, put your phone down and walk away. away, gather your thoughts, and then go, oh, what is really going on here? Why do I feel like this? Why am I having this reaction? Why am I overreacting? Why am I wanting to dive in and save or do something? So that is number one. And I've actually covered number two really in number one, which is managing your emotions. It gives you that time to regroup. It gives you that time to step back and think, what is really going on here? Why am I reacting? Now, there are people in life that want to see us react. They want to see that they've still got control over us. They want to see us running around, chasing things, fixing things, doing things that really suit them. So again, taking a step back and using those very similar techniques. I need to check my diary. One I use, I don't know, should I share it? Is I'm not 100% about that day. It feels really familiar. I can't think what I've got on. And it puts me in a place that I can then go and think, do I really want to do this? I'm agreeing to do something. Is it a place I really want to go to? Are these people really people that I want to spend time with? I suppose that actually comes from a lot of deep healing that I've done over the last 8 years, and that energy leakage that comes, and it also helps you set these really strong boundaries. So number two is managing your emotions, because there are people that want to see you running around. They want to see you wasting time. They want to see that you're invested in them and not yourself. And this could be really unusual for me. This could be a really short podcast. Number three, we can use taking a step back as a way of seeing how far we've come. It's such a powerful tool. So many people say don't look back, look forward, but I actually think it's really helpful. I think it's empowering to actually take a step back, to turn around, to assess where you were, and then look where you are now and how far you've come. I posted something the other day in my group, the Divorce Sanctuary, and it was about meditation, and there was a comment made about mediation and meditation, and it sort of got me thinking about the investment. When you go into the process of unattaching, emotionally divorcing financially and in every other way from a person that has triggered lots of wounds in you, has hurt you, and has been, in some instances, quite spiteful and vindictive, might be your experience as well, and to be able to look back and see the growth that happened within that time frame. When you're in it, you don't realize what is happening. You don't realize the tools and the muscles that you're building, the tools that you're learning. You don't appreciate the resilience, the power that it takes to get through, sometimes just getting out of bed, to go through that whole process of getting up in the morning and living a life, and then sprinkled in between letters, emails, maybe phone calls, being accused of things, holding back information. It's exhausting and draining. Something that I used to do quite regularly was tune in and see where I had energy drains, who was draining or what was draining my energy. To look back and to see where you were at certain points, on the floor, not able to get out of bed. Maybe you experienced vivid dreams. Maybe you had nightmares. Maybe you experienced adrenal fatigue, not being able to get up in the morning and being awake all night, breaking away from that trauma bond. Even living in that relationship where you're walking on eggshells and, you were reactive and picking up on every single minute change in the atmosphere because you knew what was going to happen, and you're trying to manage every conversation not to trigger an outburst, a narcissistic rage. You might have experienced flashbacks. You might have been searching for answers. Everything was heightened. Your reactions were heightened. Anything would trigger you. And your response to things might be completely disproportionate to what was going on. And it takes a lot to heal from that, to break free, to heal those wounds. So looking back you can see how far you come. You don't have to do it every day, but I think it is healthy to turn around and say, wow, 6 months ago, I couldn't get out of bed. A year ago, my life was imploding. 3 months ago, I was reacting to every single situation. Anything that was said, I couldn't respond. I was literally reacting to it in a very negative and disproportionate way. And when things like that happen, you know there's a trauma bond. You know abuse has taken place. And remember, people that have been in relatively healthy relationships that break down, the other party, the other person is going to want you to get the closure that you need because they want to move on. In these relationships, that doesn't happen. These relationships are manipulative. That manipulation continues. That control continues. They want you in their life to some degree. They need you there because they need the supply, they need the attention. And they don't care what they get. They don't care if you're reacting. In fact, it feeds them even more. So looking back, you can say, oh my gosh, I managed to pick myself up from the bathroom floor. I managed to get through the day. These were the big milestones for me. And yours might be similar, yours might be different. But it's honestly, it's so empowering to think about them. The day that I realised that was a milestone was a day I realised that I'd managed to get out of bed and get up, dressed and go to work. And it was 3:00 in the afternoon. And that was the first time I'd thought about my ex. He wasn't my waking thought. I wasn't waking up crying, wishing that I wasn't alive. That was another painful experience. I went through that quite a lot. I got up one day and I drove to work. I might have got the train, I can't remember. And I sat at a desk, and at 3:00 in the afternoon, I suddenly thought, oh my God, I've got this far. And then another one was when I hadn't thought about him for like 4 or 5 days. He wasn't in my sphere of consciousness. He wasn't there at all. And that was such a relief. And of course, during the divorce process, that's slightly different because it's constant again. And it's re-triggering again. And then everything that was being said was a lie. Not everything, but a lot of the stuff was just manipulated. And that was tuning into emotions and wounds. And this is why, for me, it's so important to do this wound work. It's so important to heal on that level, because from it comes something completely different. I had a conversation yesterday with someone, and it was around grieving the person, grieving and letting go of someone. And there's so many elements to this grief process that we have to go through. And it is, to me, like the caterpillar where we restructuring and we're breaking down within that chrysalis, and it's called something like gloop soup. I think somebody referred to it as. I watched this amazing video and they said if you cut it open during that time, it would just be goo that comes out. However, what stays intact is the DNA. And they managed to, through an experiment, one of my weird and wonderful facts that I hang on to, because to me it's just like makes so much sense. There was an experiment done, maybe multiple experiments, where they trained caterpillars. Don't ask me how or what they did, but they trained caterpillars in a certain way. They went through this breakdown gloop soup process, and they then transformed, broke out of their chrysalis. And then what happens with the butterfly is it doesn't fly off straight away. The wings are still wet, so it sits and rests, because it's had to force its way out of this container, fight its way out, break its way out. And so it sits and rests, and the wings dry out and strengthen. But what they discovered was that the DNA was intact, because the butterfly was still able to perform whatever it was that they taught the caterpillar. And to me, this transformation that happens with us is very similar. Our DNA is still intact. So this grief process is multi-layered. You start by grieving the relationship. Then you realise that the person that you were in a relationship wasn't the person that actually you were in love with, because they are proving to be a completely different person. And you realise they were playing a role, wearing a mask, and so you're grieving the person that you thought you loved, because they aren't that person. You're grieving the breakdown of the relationship. You're grieving the fake future that you created that isn't now going to materialize. And then if that's not enough, there's the grief of who you were and that person that you were. You're grieving that element of yourself and letting go of her or him. You're grieving the person that stepped in at another point. There's an element of you that stepped forward, that took on the role of leading your life during that process. Now, that actually could be a child that stepped in, but there is an element of a persona that you created that got you through that period of time. So there's the grief of her or him. And then there's this new person that's emerging, which is you still, as was the person that you've just grieved who stepped in. They're all you, just different elements. So there's a lot going on. And I go back to the beginning of this, which is taking a step back is actually healthy. Looking back is healthy. It isn't, I've taken one step forward and now 2 steps back. This can be a healthy process. It can be a time to pause, like the butterfly that's just broken out and has got wet wings. Each moment can be a time to pause and reflect and empower yourself on how far you've come. So taking a step back helps you with your responding and reacting. So you're not reacting to a situation, you're setting boundaries. As I said, have a few examples in your pocket that you go, oh, okay, I honestly need to, my brain's not working at the moment. I need that time to think. I need to go and check my diary. That day sounds familiar, but let me check and come back. Stepping back gives you a chance to take control of your emotions and ask, what is going on? Why am I reacting in this way? What emotion, what age am I that this is coming from? This is a lot of the work that I do. And the other way of using a step back is to see how far you've come and empower yourself. Oh, look, I lied. I said I thought it was going to be a quick podcast this week, but I got chatting again. I hope it's been helpful and you do get a chance to step back and look particularly how far you've come. As always, I'm sending you loads and loads of love until next time.